Okay, so it's recording now. All right, everyone, thank you for joining me this morning for a quick 15-minute presentation on universal design for learning. And I'm going to just get right into it. I really started thinking about this topic when I began teaching at UCLA. So when I began teaching at UCLA, I looked out into the crowd of undergraduate students, and I could clearly see that we have a diverse student body, racially, economically, culturally, and in regards to disability. Our disabled population alone is approximately 16% of our student population. As diverse as our student population is, why is it that we assume that there is a single way to teach these students? Each of us is unique in our preferences for food, music, movies, clothing. We are also unique in the way that we learn best. So again, why is it as educators, do we educate the students in one modality? What if I told these students moving from kindergarten through 12th grade that they could only eat German food for the first 18 years of their life? Each of us would say that's crazy. We want variety. We want Mexican food on Monday, Chinese food Tuesday. We crave options. As an instructional designer and educator, I've been searching for an educational experience that is inclusive, regardless of background, culture, ability, or disability. And that is when I came across universal design for learning. We must rethink the pedagogical framework so that we can be inclusive for all students, not just the typical ones who thrive in a specific learning environment. Today, we will talk about a teaching and learning framework for maximum inclusion. And that framework is called Universal Design for Learning. So I'm going to go ahead and begin my screen share. Here we see the deck. And this art was done by an artist named Dadu Shin, who was commissioned by the New York Times to illustrate how we move in and out of disability throughout our lives and eventually age into disability as we reach senescence. So this is the first question I have for you guys. This is a graph showing literacy rates in Europe between 1475 and the year 2015. And you can see a really steep rise in literacy. So I want you to go to menti.com and use the code 97069 and answer this question. Why do you think that literacy went up in Europe during the 1800s? I just want to kind of get an idea of why you think this historical phenomenon took place. I'll give you a moment. You could use your cell phone or the browser as well. So we see one answer coming in. So the interface may not be completely accessible. This is something that we're, all right. These are all correct. These are all correct answers. What happened during the 1800s was the Industrial Revolution. As many people moved from agrarian lifestyles, mainly farming lifestyles, to cities, there was a need for education, for literacy. And what began was something called the Prussian model of education, also known as public education. So the German model, the Prussian model, was that each of us start kindergarten at around 5 years of age and make our way using age-based cohorts through our years of education. And what we're looking at is a system where each grade, there's competencies related to each grade, and we move through our education system with the same students and with the same competencies. And this begs the question, so this model was really based on efficiencies and was designed after industrialization. And this begs the question today, in the year 2019, why are we using an industrial model? Meaning that our society has shifted away from industrialization to more of technology, service models, yet we are still using an old model of education. And I'm here to tell you that there is a different way to educate our children other than the Prussian model. So today's learning objectives are as follows. By the end of this training, you should be able to summarize universal design for learning, summarize the Prussian model, which we just did, which is really about efficiency and industrialization of education, and identify the 3 pillars of UDL. Universal Design for Learning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Travis Lee. I am the Disabilities and Computing Program Coordinator here at UCLA. The DCP, the job of myself, is to make sure that we build access into our technology and into our websites. And I train and I design and develop content that is accessible and teach people how to design and develop accessible content as well. So I do want to point out that Universal Design for Learning and accessibility are two different things. Accessibility is about designing technology and experiences for people with disabilities, whereas Universal Design for Learning is a teaching and learning framework that is designed for everyone to learn best, including people with learning disabilities, and different learning styles or preferences. So one example where UDL and accessibility butt heads is an example at UC Berkeley recently, where there was a faculty members who were uploading recorded video content to iTunes U, and the videos were not captioned. From a UDL perspective, that is a great thing to do, to give a student multiple means of access to their content. So some students couldn't make class, some students needed to fast forward and rewind, so the videos were a really great option for them. But in terms of accessibility, the problem was that they were not captioned. So someone who was deaf or low hearing couldn't hear the videos. So they had to pull the videos down. And that's an example where Universal Design for Learning may be good, but accessibility is low, and they butt heads in that perspective. So just know that accessibility and UDL are two different things. I'm gonna now get into the Universal Design for Learning. So this is what David Rose, the CAST founder and chief scientist. CAST is one of the think tanks for UDL. They're one of the originators of Universal Design for Learning. And this is what David Rose had to say about UDL. UDL is a framework for teaching and learning that assumes from the beginning that learners are very different. The goal is to design a learning environment that is as diverse as your students are. So if we could get that out of the way, if we could agree that our students are diverse, that they are coming from different cultures and different backgrounds and have different preferences, we could also assume that their learning styles are also different, or the way that they learn best is different. And that is what the entire framework for UDL is based on, is trying to educate as many people as possible using a multiple means of teaching and learning. So it's broken down into three major principles. The three major principles are the why, what, and how of learning, and offering multiple means of each of these. So the first one is why. Multiple means of engagement. How do we engage students in multiple ways? Next is how do we teach, how do we represent what we know to our students in multiple ways? It could be video, it could be podcasts, it could be infographics, it could be lecturing. But right now, especially in the college level, we've very much gotten used to a model called the sage on the stage, meaning that there is a person of expertise who stands in the front of the classroom and who lectures at a large group of students, and everything that they say could be on the test, could be on the midterm, and they have to listen. And that's called the sage on the stage. And the last element is the how of learning, multiple means of expression. Giving the students multiple ways to express what they've learned. Are they going to turn in a multiple choice assignment, a multiple choice test? Are they going to write a paper? Are they going to develop a video or a podcast themselves? There are many ways for students to show what they've learned. I'm going to go into a few examples of each of these right now. So starting with multiple means of engagement. A lot of it is recruiting prior interest. So when you talk about multiple means of engagement, we're talking about the goal is this. The goal is to really focus and flow is the goal of multiple means of engagement. When I think about focus and flow, we've all been there when the world kind of turns off around you, and the only thing you think about and the only thing you're focused on is whatever is at hand, whatever you're reading, whatever you're watching. I think about like a teenager, like a 12-year-old boy playing video games. That's when I think about focus and flow. They are so engaged in what they're looking at that nothing else matters. You got to unplug the video game machine for them to listen to you. So that's what we're working towards that level of engagement. And the way you do it is recruiting prior interest. So I've helped develop a few courses, and one of the courses at UC Berkeley that I developed was an Asian American history class that talked about Asian American activism during the 1960s. And their assignment was either to write about an activist group or actually join and go to a meeting of an activist group. And a few students actually not only went to an activist group and wrote about it. They actually joined the activist group, in this case with the Southeast Asian American March for Equity. This is an example of a student who was service-minded, who was engaged through community service, and was able to learn more through, instead of just writing about it, actually experiencing it. That's a way of engaging students who are service-minded. Another way to engage students is using pop culture or something that they're recruiting, like some sort of interest they already had. In this case, we have a faculty at UC Riverside who created a course around 18th century Latin American history, and they use something called digital zombies. In 2014, Walking Dead was really popular, an AMC show, and so she wanted to gamify the course using digital zombies. Where did it go? Okay, so in the course, they had missions were designed around like zombie type missions where they would have to go locate a library. So a digital zombie to her was someone who only did internet research. In this case, we had a lot of students who've never even been to a library to search primary sources. And so they created all these missions to actually engage the students through zombies and gaming and also getting them into the library. And that's the goal. All right. The next is multiple means of representation. So faculty, like I said earlier, have a tendency to do the sage on the stage, to speak in the front of the podium and talk to a large group of students. But that doesn't really work for all students. We know that attention is a major issue with the Gen Z generation. We also know that students want to use different modalities of learning. Some do better from reading, some do better watching video. In this case, we have a faculty from UCR who created a series of podcasts. We know at UC Riverside, there are a lot of commuter students commuting from all over the Inland Empire into Riverside, and that's a lot of time in the car. So what she did is created a number of podcasts that they could listen to.
Hi again. This decade's visit with Hedda, my great-grandmother. She was 10 years old when the Mexican Revolution started, and I'd really be surprised if she knew anything about it.
So that's an example of a faculty who's thinking outside the box and thinking about her students' lifestyles, always on the go, and creating a series of podcasts. And we also created transcripts for students who are low hearing or deaf or who want to read it. So that's an example of multiple means of representation. All right, another example is virtual reality. The UC system has purchased a number of Oculus headgear there's available at the library. And a faculty at Riverside decided to create a virtual reality experience of a Che Guevara speech, where the students could go to a speech that was done in the 1950s during the Cuban Revolution. And this is a really good use of technology in terms of looking at ways to be more immersive, to engage students who are into gaming, who want to do more experiential stuff. So think about using experimental technology such as AR and VR. Lastly, we have multiple means of expression. This is a tough one because a lot of faculty are like, how do I grade someone who's turned in like a musical piece about a historical event? You know, there's ways we could rethink the rubric and ways we could rethink the way that we design courses so we could allow students to have multiple means of expression. So in one class, instead of a typical essay, we had we allowed them to create a blog where they would go out and do what's called digital writing, which is a different type of writing that includes images and text and video. And it really is looking at the new ways of writing that is more common, is more concise than, say, the typical sandwich essay, which is like introduction, paragraph, paragraph, argument, argument, and conclusion. So we're looking at new ways of writing as multiple means of representation. Oops. This is a video essay. At CU Denver, where I go to school, there was a lot of UDL happening in a number of courses, and some faculty allow students to turn in video assignments versus a written assignment. In this case, I did a video essay around learning theories, and I was able to not only create this video, but contribute to an online community of open educational resource. This particular video has already gotten 40,000 hits, meaning 40,000 people found this video useful. And so think about how not only the students could be showing what they learned, but also contributing to the educational community at large. I'm gonna skip this, we're running low on time. The last one example of multiple means of expression is that not all students want to take a test or excel at writing papers. In this case, we have the same class at Berkeley where they're talking about Asian American history. In this case, a student talked about the history of Vietnam through the food of Vietnam and talked about the occupation of both the French and the Chinese and how through their cuisine, it reflects their own history. And she was very proud of this, and it was a very meaningful experience for not only her speaking publicly, but also the people listening to it, whereas an essay might have just been graded and not been experienced by a lot of other people. And in conclusion, I just want to say that that we should rethink the way that we teach and the way the students learn. Because we've always used the Prussian model of education does not mean that it's the best model of education. I will argue that you don't need to insert UDL in every aspect of your course. Like allowing students a few assignments that are UDL enhanced might go a long way. There's a lot of evidence to show that universal design for learning doesn't need to be fully adopted, but we could kind of transition like a gradient of the Prussian model plus UDL in our courses. And when I took this job, I had a lot of people saying that what we're trying to do in UDL and in accessibility, it cannot be overcome. And I think back to Helen Keller, who was the first college graduate who was both deaf and blind. And when there was all doubters around her, this is what she had to say. While they were saying among themselves, it cannot be done, it was done. And it gives me hope, and it reminds me that universal design for learning and accessibility are important and can be done. And just because people say it can't be done doesn't mean that it will not be done. So thank you for joining me on this 15-minute presentation for UDL. I had one extra question, and here it is. If you go back to the Mentimeter, what are the 3 major factors of universal design for learning? And hopefully it works. Open voting. Okay, here we go. And go to it. And this is kind of the last little quiz. Make sure you guys are learning. Oh. Let's see how it goes. Can you guys access the Mentimeter? Let's see. Okay, great. Okay, well, not everyone had a chance to go to it, but I do want to, okay, yeah. The Mentimeter is a little funny because you can see the results, and then like you should actually hide the results until everyone's done. Okay, great, fantastic. I do want to mention that I have a handout for you guys. It's in the link. These are, this handout outlines different types of learners. We have dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and physical disability, and some of the best practices around how you might want to educate people with these different types of learning issues or learning styles or disabilities. So, and if you want to, I have an assignment for you. If you go to the DCP, UCLA DCP Slack, if you want to add anything to the handouts that I gave you in the program, if you have some ideas like how to better educate people with ADHD, people who are on autism spectrum, I created these infographics for a different class. I did research on it, but if you guys want to add anything to the DCP Slack channel around best practices for students with PTSD, with depression, I'd be more than happy to hearing some of the best practices for teaching people with different disabilities. All right. So now if you have any questions, the floor is open. All right. No questions? Okay, so I'm gonna end the meeting now, and there's gonna be a recording that I will upload to the forum in the CU Denver Learning Management System. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.